Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into a really fascinating journey through the literal mechanisms of global change. We're going to be drawing our insights straight from Dr. Susan Edwards' absolutely brilliant essay, Transformations, Acknowledging, Assessing, and Achieving Change, which was featured in the 2018-2019 Phi Theta Kappa Honors Study Program Guide. We're going to break down exactly how society navigates massive, earth-shattering shifts, how we acknowledge them in the first place, how we assess their true impact, and ultimately, how we actively achieve meaningful transformation in a world that just will not stop evolving. To really set the stage for this, think about this iconic lyric from Bob Dylan, recorded way back in 1963. Dylan wrote these incredibly concise, hypnotic verses with a very specific purpose in mind. He wanted to document and assess the massive, sweeping social transformations happening all over the world during the 1950s and 60s. He actually performed at the March on Washington just before he recorded this. It perfectly establishes a fundamental truth that we have to keep front and center. Cultural transformation isn't just some one-time isolated event. It's a constant, unstoppable force that we've got to continually acknowledge. So over 55 years later, we're obviously still living in incredibly interesting, shifting times, which brings us to the core philosophical question of this whole explainer. What exactly can we learn from global transformations? Well, as the filmmaker Ken Burns argues, history actually arms people for the present. By studying these historical and ongoing shifts, we're basically equipping ourselves to handle the future. And, believe it or not, we might even find a reason to be hopeful about it. Okay, let's look at our roadmap for today. We're going to explore 6 interconnected areas: acknowledging times of change, nature and economies, corporate shifts, divergent worldviews, the digital dilemma, and finally, global creativity. Section 1. Acknowledging times of change, times of shift. 7,000. Take a second to really think about that number. That is exactly how many rare animals photographer Joel Sartor spent 12 years traveling the globe to capture in human care. Why go through all that trouble? Well, he was completely haunted by a single, terrifying question. How in the world do we get people to care that we might actually lose half of all species by the turn of the next century? By getting us to look right into the eyes of these animals, he literally forces us to acknowledge their beauty and their dignity. Sartor recognized that we're all part of this massive global network of life, and just simply acknowledging these animals is that absolutely crucial first step before they're gone forever. And that global network of life is completely, inextricably tied to our human economies. Take Panama, for example. Conservation biologist Brian Gratwick is working down there to save at-risk amphibians, but his work highlights a really delicate balancing act. On one hand, Panama is trying to protect 255 different mammal species and 972 indigenous bird species. But on the other hand, they are simultaneously trying to navigate the very real need for development to boost a growing economy. It is the perfect real-world example of acknowledging conservation while dealing with hard economic realities. Section 2. Nature, Economies, and Recovery. Paths to recovery. Now, we all know the tremendous, heartbreaking human suffering caused by natural disasters. Back in 2017, Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria absolutely devastated parts of the U.S. and the Caribbean. We're talking damages estimated somewhere between $150 and $200 billion. But assessing change means we have to look at the long-term trajectory too. As journalist Clay Dillow pointed out, these devastating events actually force our economic systems to adapt. Now, while the recovery is often super uneven across different socioeconomic groups, the resulting spending bumps and the massive rebuilding efforts can actually offset the initial wreckage. And ideally, it helps nations fortify themselves against future disasters. Natural disruptions obviously impact global agriculture too, which actually gives us a great pivot to look at India. So agriculture accounts for about 47% of India's labor force. However, and this is wild, more than 2/3, 67% of the entire nation's economic output is now driven by services. By leaning into its large English-speaking population, India has completely transformed its economy, capitalizing on IT services, business outsourcing, and software. And business leaders over there are quick to point out that it's the young entrepreneurs who are the ones actually driving this massive transformation into a 21st century economic powerhouse. Section 3. Assessing corporate economic shifts. Economic assessment. You hear politicians say it all the time, right? Small businesses are the backbone of the economy. But if you look at the data over the past 40 years, the rate of new business creation has actually fallen. The real modern trajectory we are on is corporate consolidation. Just look at this. Back in 2000, the U.S. had 10 major airlines. Today, there are only 4, and together, those 4 control a staggering 83% of the market. And the sheer scale of what happens after that consolidation directly hits you and me, the consumers. Just look at this massive leap in airline fee revenue. Charging travelers for basic stuff like checking a bag or getting a seat with a couple extra inches of legroom. In 2007, those little fees earned the airlines $543 million. By 2016, that number had absolutely exploded to $4.2 billion. That's a real game changer. So it forces us to ask, if small businesses are supposedly the key, how do we stem this kind of multinational corporate growth? Or, on the flip side, is this massive corporate transformation exactly what we need to meet today's demands? Section 4. Dialogue and Divergent Worldviews. Respectful Dialogues. Achieving change requires navigating the messy, human element of divergent perspectives. A really powerful example of this played out in the National Football League, which became this incredibly unexpected force in identity politics. Colin Kaepernick famously took a knee during the national anthem to express his deep concern about police brutality and to protest global oppression. Meanwhile, his detractors argued just as passionately that the gesture was highly disrespectful to the nation's flag and to the military personnel who fought for its freedom. Now, we aren't here to take a side on this at all. Instead, we want to look at it impartially as a catalyst. These intensely opposing viewpoints perfectly illustrate how identity politics create complex, deeply emotional catalysts for broader societal transformation. And that leads us to a really critical question. In what ways is society transformed when we actually sit down and engage in respectful dialogues about our differences? Or, to put it a little more pointedly, how can a society possibly progress or achieve any kind of meaningful change if we completely fail to listen to one another's divergent worldviews? Section 5. The Digital Data Dilemma. Access versus privacy. So, the digital revolution means we have absolutely unprecedented access to information, right? But the catch is, so do businesses. Take this incredibly surprising example. A Wisconsin-based company called 3 Square Market actually embedded microchips into their employees' hands to replace their company badges, literally in their hands. They were hoping to pioneer this sci-fi, cashless society where you just pay for things with a wave of your hand. Now, while the company promised the chips wouldn't be used as tracking devices, it really highlights this intense, modern tension we are all feeling between ultimate convenience and the complete loss of our personal privacy. But wait, let's contrast that corporate tracking with what's happening in the medical field. Traditionally, global medical researchers have been pretty reluctant to share their findings. But Yale cardiologist Harlan Krumholz makes a fantastic point. He argues that if the ultimate goal is to save lives, then not sharing personal medical data with multiple researchers just doesn't make any sense. This paradigm shift, this idea that individuals actually own their data and can choose to share it openly, that could radically transform medical research. We're talking about sharing diseases here. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the digital dilemma we are living through right now. On one side of the coin, we have these incredible pros, pooling data to cure terrible diseases and truly empowering individuals. But on the other side, we've got the severe cons. Massive, terrifying vulnerability to data breaches. We've already seen evidence of hacked data, bots, and hackers actively interfering in elections in the US, France, and Germany, not to mention drones sabotaging munitions plants in Ukraine. It is a genuine ethical tightrope. Technology is simply moving way faster than our ability to safeguard it. Section 6. Global Creativity and Transformation. Arts and Transformation. To wrap things up, let's look at how technology has radically transformed the arts. While major Western corporations obviously still promote massive top-selling artists like Drake and Adele, the internet has completely empowered a new wave of independent global creators to just bypass those corporate gatekeepers entirely. In Tokyo, there's an event called Comiket that draws 590,000 participants just sharing self-published comic works. Over on platforms like SoundCloud, artists like the French-Algerian singer Taha are being discovered instantly. You've got Bungie Garland ruling contemporary soca down in Trinidad, and creators like Kashu running these underground techno happenings in abandoned buildings in Brazil to draw rapid attention to political issues. Technology is literally allowing everyday people to transform the global art scene from the ground up, and it is moving at lightning speed. Which brings us to our final thought. We've seen exactly how Dr. Edwards' essay frames the way we acknowledge natural shifts, how we assess the cold, hard economic data, and how we attempt to achieve real societal progress. But as technology continues to accelerate change so much faster than our ethics can even adapt, how will you navigate these global transformations? I really want you to take this information, look closely at the world around you, and consider your own personal role in acknowledging, assessing, and achieving change. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.